Chapter 40. Sheng Guanfeng's speed was very fast. In less than a moment, someone quickly came over and carried the 4 injured and unconscious slaves away for treatment. Sheng Guanfeng personally took Yang Chen to another large courtyard that looked more exquisite and luxurious than the original one. The servants were already waiting here, carefully welcoming Yang Chen and Sheng Guanfeng in. This huge xian is the place where the inner sects invigilator disciples live during the Chunyang Palace's preparatory disciple examination. Sheng Guanfeng enthusiastically introduced to Yang Chen, "In the next 3 years, this place will belong to you." "Manager Shangguan, isn't this a bit against the rules?" Of course, Yang Chen knew what huge xian was for. He didn't expect Sheng Guanfeng to arrange this independent courtyard for Yang Chen. This made Yang Chen a little confused, not knowing what Sheng Guanfeng meant. "There are already twice as many servants in this courtyard. Your 4 servants will be transferred here as soon as they recover from their injuries." Sheng Guanfeng didn't answer Yang Chen's question and said to himself, "Anyway, no one in this Ixio villa is dissatisfied with you living here." "Manager?" Yang Chen had to call Sheng Guanfeng again, reminding him, "It's against the rules." "The rules? It's just that everyone is used to this arrangement, but no one said that it must be like this. You can live here in peace, this is not against the rules," Sheng Guanfeng said faintly. At this moment, his performance was completely different from the Sheng Guanfeng that Yang Chen saw yesterday and before the battle. "Because of Marshal Uncle Chu's order, I have to deal with you according to his arrangement, but today's battle has enlightened me. You have such strength without even cultivating. If you succeed in refining your qi and building your foundation, I don't know how amazing you will be." Sheng Guanfeng seemed to see Yang Chen's doubts and slowly explained, "I am optimistic about you." Just being optimistic about Yang Chen's future did not seem to be enough to explain the doubts in Yang Chen's heart. After all, in this case, if Yang Chen's performance provoked Chu Heng's anger, it would not be difficult for him to secretly cripple Yang Chen. How many talented disciples in cultivation had died prematurely because of all kinds of accidents in the process of their growth? The number was already uncountable. "You are different from the others. You are someone that Fairy sure thinks highly of." Sheng Guanfeng continued, "Even if Li Qingchen of the greatest heaven sect is jealous, he would not dare to take your life. Chu Heng would not dare. He can only rely on his convenience as an inner sect disciple to set up layers upon layers of obstacles for you. But rules are rules. If you can bypass these obstacles, no one can stop you." When he spoke, he first called Chu Heng Marshal Uncle, but later he directly called Chu Heng by his name. Clearly, he was very dissatisfied with the arrangements he had made. At this point, Yang Chen finally believed that Sheng Guanfeng did not really want to harm him. It was only because of Chu Heng's orders that he had to do this. There was no other way. Chu Heng was an inner sect disciple, and he had been an inner sect disciple for the past few years. His name was also justifiable. First, it was to train Yang Chen, and second, it was to set up artificial obstacles. Was it wrong for me to let you enjoy the treatment of a 3rd-layer qi refining disciple? As for whether or not others dared to teach Yang Chen, that was their problem. What did it have to do with Chu Heng? Understanding this, Yang Chen did not have any more precautions. He only nodded, accepting Sheng Guanfeng's goodwill. "Junior brother Yang, you must not have eaten lunch. I'll get someone to prepare it immediately." Sheng Guanfeng also knew that there would be plenty of time in the future, so he did not plan to do anything in one day. After giving the orders to the servants, he was about to leave when Yang Chen called out to him, "Junior brother Yang, do you have any other instructions?" Sheng Guanfeng asked with a smile. Yang Chen extended his hand and made an inviting gesture, inviting Sheng Guanfeng to sit down. The 2 maids had good eyesight. They quickly served fragrant tea and then neatly retreated out of the living room. "Sheng Guanfeng, don't blame me for speaking too much. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me." As soon as Yang Chen opened his mouth, he first found an excuse for himself, as if intending to say something excessive. Sheng Guanfeng did not have so many misgivings. He said with a smile, "Go ahead." "Then I won't be polite, Sheng Guanfeng." Yang Chen cupped his fist at Sheng Guanfeng, and then said very seriously, "Although I haven't cultivated, I have practiced martial arts for a few days." I saw that when Shengguan Feng took my stick, you obviously used one hand first. After the contact, you found that it was not enough, so you used both hands at the same time. Even so, it is estimated that Shengguan Feng did not use his full strength, so 2 tiles were broken. What Yang Chen said was the situation where Shengguan Feng took Yang Chen's stick at the end of the battle. Exactly, is there a problem? Seeing that Yang Chen said it seriously, Shengguan Feng also seemed to feel that Yang Chen was not simply giving a simple evaluation, so he also asked seriously, "Junior brother Yang, please advise me." "I dare not advise you." Yang Chen hurriedly said, "This kind of method of estimating the opponent's strength and then leaving a way out is understandable in many cases. However, in some situations where one needed to stake everything on a single throw, such a timid and overcautious approach, thinking that one's plan was very clear, would inevitably plant the seeds of failure. It is better to make a prompt decision and cut off all means of retreat. Success or failure depends on this one move. Maybe the enemy will not be able to resist under the irresistible force." Although Yang Chen said that he dared not advise him, there was already a hint of advice in his tone, and even the content was the same. In the beginning, Shengguan Feng only took it seriously on the surface, but in his heart he really did not think much of it. Yang Chen actually planned to use the principles of martial arts to teach him. Wasn't this asking to be humiliated? However, the more Shengguan Feng listened, the more serious he became. As soon as Yang Chen opened his mouth to talk about some occasions, he immediately thought of the moment of breaking through to the foundation establishment stage. Could it be that Yang Chen was giving him pointers on how to build his foundation? But if the last moment of breaking through is the most critical moment, and I have to save some strength, what should I do? Shengguan Feng could not help but ask, as if Yang Chen was a supermaster. If you want to push a boulder, you need a lot of strength. Yang Chen frowned and used an analogy. However, once you use all your strength to push the boulder faster and faster, if you want to stop the boulder, you need several times or even dozens of times the strength. If you keep your strength and slowly push the boulder to the pass, and then increase your strength to pass, it is better to push the boulder up, and it will naturally help you break through the pass. Chapter 41. Hearing the latter words of Yang Chen, Shanghai Feng seemed to be enlightened, and the confusion of many years seemed to disappear. In the past few decades, he had heard countless masters who had reached the Zhuji phase tell him about their experiences. They all said that the last pass was the most difficult, and many people had tried all kinds of ways to break through. According to the experience of predecessors, Shanghai Feng almost racked his brains, but he had never succeeded. He always failed at the last moment. But this also strengthened his belief that the last pass of Zhuji phase was extremely difficult, and he needed to save some strength for the final sprint. At the very least, there were a few foundation establishment experts who said so, and they also did so. However, not all experiences were suitable for everyone. Shanghai Feng tried for decades, and he was physically and mentally exhausted. After decades of disappointment and despair, he was finally completely disheartened and no longer hoped to reach the Zhuji phase. He wholeheartedly took care of Yixiu Villa for Chunyang Palace until today. Yang Chen had an impression of him. A long time later in his previous life, Shanghai Feng finally succeeded in Zhuji phase, which was the result of his last desperate attack. At that time, Shanghai Feng even sighed that if he had used this method 100 years ago, he might have entered the Zhuji phase and become an inner sect disciple. He would not have wasted 200 years and missed the best time for cultivation. Since Shanghai Feng had shown such an attitude to him in this life, Yang Chen did not mind telling him this. Anyway, it was not a bad thing for Yixiu Villa to have a manager in the Zhuji phase who had a good impression of him, and he also owed him a big favor out of thin air. Such a thing was beneficial and costly, and there was no reason not to do it. Shanghai Feng did not think so. He had been desperate, but at this moment, the flame of hope suddenly rekindled. Thinking about the method, Yang Chen said, he had even seen what he would look like after he succeeded in Zhuji phase. After thinking for a moment, Shanghai Feng suddenly stood up and bowed deeply to Yang Chen. Many thanks for junior brother Yang's guidance. If I succeed in building my foundation in the future, I will definitely not forget junior brother Yang's kindness. These words were the sincere thoughts of Shen Guanfeng. He had unspeakable gratitude towards Yang Chen. Foundation establishment? Yang Chen pretended to be stunned and said with a chuckle, Senior martial brother Shangguan, I just told you about my experience in martial arts. It has nothing to do with foundation building. If senior martial brother has any insights, that is senior martial brother's good fortune. It cannot be attributed to me. Although Yang Chen said so, Feng would never think so. The more Yang Chen did not claim credit for himself and the more pure his character was, the more grateful he was. In his ecstasy, Shangguan Feng no longer cared about anything else. He cupped his hands towards Yang Chen and thanked him. Junior brother Yang, I will immediately go into secluded cultivation. It will take at least a month, or at most 3 months. When I come out, I will personally guide you. Others might not dare to guide you in the 3rd layer of qi refining, but this old man should be qualified, right? Then I will first wish senior martial brother success. Yang Chen did not forget to praise Shangguan Feng and said, Many thanks, senior martial brother Shangguan. Unknowingly, he had already changed the way he addressed Shangguan Feng to senior martial brother instead of chief steward. This time, Shangguan Feng acted even faster. That night, the 4 servants who were injured by Yang Chen were all sent to Huge Xian. The injuries on the 4 people's bodies were almost healed and could no longer be seen on the surface. Presumably, they had used a lot of precious elixirs. Shangguan Feng arranged everything that night and hurriedly went into secluded cultivation to attack foundation establishment. When Shinda and the other 3 saw Yang Chen again, they no longer had the arrogance they had before. They were originally slaves and only had that kind of thought because Yang Chen was treated coldly by his superiors. Now that Yang Chen had displayed his invincible might and forced the 4 of them to not leave with a clear mind, in addition to Shangguan Feng's strict warning, the 4 of them did not dare to have any other thoughts. When facing Yang Chen, they were respectful and bent to his ear. They did whatever Yang Chen wanted them to do, not daring to disobey in the slightest. While Shangguan Feng was in secluded cultivation, Yang Chen had no choice but to face Chu Heng's unique skill again. He raised Yang Chen's status so high and treated him so well, making others speechless. Although Yang Chen did not care whether he could learn these basic knowledge at all, and he did not need it for a long time, in order to avoid suspicion, he had to pretend to learn from the beginning. Otherwise, a guy who was full of knowledge, proficient in medicine and medicine identification, and knew everything about astronomy and geography would obviously be suspicious if he became an executioner. The cultivation sects attached great importance to inheritance. If Yang Chen recklessly exposed that he had learned these things before, he would definitely be regarded as a spy from other sects who stole the cultivation methods of Chunyang Palace. If that was the case, Chu Heng would be very happy to kill Yang Chen and then make a great contribution in the sect. Therefore, even if Yang Chen pretended, he had to pretend. Naturally, Yang Chen, the disciple of the executioner, became an illiterate who could not read a word. Well, of course, he might be able to recognize a few words, but it would never be more than 100, right? Shangguan Feng said that when he came out of seclusion, he would personally instruct Yang Chen. However, in the eyes of Yang Chen, it was a bit overkill to ask a person like Shangguan Feng to arrange this kind of thing. Moreover, it was too easy to use this kind of thing to return the favor to Yang Chen. Early the next morning, Yang Chen came to the book pavilion again under the guidance of Shinda. This time, he did not come directly to the book pavilion, where the preparatory disciples who had entered the sect like him had lessons, but to the disciples who had joined Chunyang Palace a year earlier than him. Seeing Yang Chen come in, the old teacher in charge of the book pavilion immediately stood up and saluted to Yang Chen. Senior brother Yang, you have come to the Hanlin Pavilion. Do you want to give some advice to these junior brothers? Senior brother, please take a seat. It was the same as yesterday. The disciples who were seated also stood up to greet him. Everything was the same as yesterday. I don't dare. I have just arrived here and there are still many things I don't understand. There are some things that I would like to consult with the headmaster. Yang Chen first used reason to convince people, lowered his posture, and said politely, I don't dare. How would I dare to give advice to senior brother Yang? The old teacher in charge was shocked. His tone was exaggerated and he waved his hands. I don't deserve it, I don't deserve it. Can't I? Seeing this perfunctory attitude, Yang Chen's tone immediately changed. I don't dare. Senior brother Yang. The old teacher in charge still had the same attitude. You have already surpassed the disciples of the third level of the Qi refining realm. How would I dare to give you advice? Absolutely not. Humph. Yang Chen snorted coldly and suddenly said, Since that is the case, I will not make things difficult for you. However, I am afraid that you will mislead the disciples, so I have to test you first. With a slap, a book was thrown in front of the old teacher in charge. Yang Chen boldly sat down on the side and said loudly, Read it word by word for me and explain it again. I want to hear if there are any mistakes. Chapter 42. As soon as Yang Chen said this, whether it was the teacher, the preparatory disciples, or even Shenda, they were all dumbfounded. Testing? What was this? However, no matter who it was, no one dared to object. Yang Chen had the treatment of a third-level disciple, which was set by this year's training disciple, Chu Heng. At the same time, it was also arranged by Shengguan Feng. Who dared to disrespect him? Since he was a third-layer disciple, he naturally had the right to test the preparatory disciples, and even the teachers. However, if this was the case, would Chu Heng's arrangement still work? The first one to react was Shenda. Ever since he was taught a lesson by Yang Chen, Shenda didn't dare to have any other thoughts. With Shengguan Feng's repeated warnings, he now completely understood the situation. Of course, the most important thing was that Yang Chen's actions didn't break the rules set by Chu Heng. It was completely reasonable, and no one could say anything against it. So Shenda immediately yelled at the teacher, Young Master Yang's orders, why don't you obey? Shenda was considered a person with some prestige among the servants. With his yell, the teacher didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly picked up the book that Yang Chen threw over, opened it, and began to read slowly. Since he knew that Chu Heng's arrangements had no meaning, the old teacher was very perceptive. Not only did he read slowly, but his explanations were also very clear and logical. There were no signs of him trying to cheat. The other preparatory disciples, looking at Yang Chen's eyes, also seemed to have changed a little. Since Yang Chen could use this method to break the blockade, and also enjoy higher treatment than everyone, more resources, maybe he would soon be above everyone. However, no one said anything, and they all listened quietly. The old teacher had talked about this book before, so it was better to listen to it again. Yang Chen was holding a book that was exactly the same as the old teacher's. He pretended to flip through the pages and read. The others saw this, but they thought he was seriously memorizing, so no one dared to interrupt him. Yesterday, Yang Chen single-handedly challenged 4 third-layer Qi refining slaves. 3 of them had magic tools and 1 of them practiced flame palm, but all of them were beaten to the ground by Yang Chen. The news had already spread, so when everyone looked at Yang Chen, they naturally didn't dare to underestimate him anymore. In the following days, Yang Chen would change a different instructor and a different book every day. Every time, he would have the instructors read to him and then explain to him. The reason he gave was that he wanted to see if these instructors were misleading the students. Anyway, he would have to test every single one of them for a day and a half. He would only stop after he finished explaining 1 or 2 of the books. Very quickly, everyone got used to this kind of life. First, Yang Chen didn't break the rules, and second, before Chief Steward Shengguan went into seclusion, he had specifically told them to do as much as possible to make things convenient for Yang Chen. However, everyone did as Yang Chen asked, and everything went smoothly. When Du Qian mysteriously appeared in huge pavilion, Yang Chen just happened to be sending away an instructor who taught medicine identification. Turning around, he found Du Qian standing there with a smile that wasn't a smile, looking at Yang Chen. Martial Uncle Du. Yang Chen hurriedly saluted. This was the rule, etiquette couldn't be ignored. Originally, I thought that Chu Heng deliberately came to give you some pointers to make things difficult for you. Now, it seems that everything is fine? Du Qian admired Yang Chen very much. Perhaps Yang Chen's background as an executioner was very similar to his current status as a law enforcement hall disciple. Moreover, Yang Chen had greatly embarrassed Chu Heng for him. Originally, he thought that Yang Chen wouldn't be satisfied, but now, it was completely different. Why, did Chu Heng cancel your treatment? The treatment is still there. Yang Chen replied with a somewhat self-deprecating smile. Then why did that instructor dare to teach you medicine identification? Du Qian couldn't understand. He originally wanted to help Yang Chen, but it seemed that Yang Chen didn't need help at all. Teach disciple medicine identification? No, Martial Uncle Du, you're wrong. Yang Chen raised a finger and shook it very seriously. He didn't teach disciple medicine identification, Martial Uncle Du. I saw it with my own eyes, how can it be fake? Du Qian scolded with a smile, then asked, if not teaching you medicine identification, then what is it? Are you the one teaching him? Almost, Martial Uncle Du. Yang Chen chuckled. It's not him teaching disciple, it's the disciple who is testing him, to see if he knows what these things are, so that he doesn't learn well and mislead the other disciples. You also know that since disciples are treated better than other disciples the moment they enter the hall, they naturally have to be more tolerant. These matters of the school assessment, I will reluctantly accept it first. Take the assessment seriously, lest some people who fish in troubled waters sneak in and ruin the future of the other disciples. Listening to Yang Chen's proud and shameless words, even though Du Qian was in a good mood, he couldn't help but laugh at Yang Chen. He shook his head and disappeared in a flash. Du Qian couldn't say how much support he had for Yang Chen, but he always felt like they were old friends at the first sight. Although Du Qian's visit this time seemed to be of no use, at least Yang Chen got the same opportunity, which made Du Qian feel more at ease. Since there were no more problems, he didn't linger anymore and turned to leave. Yang Chen learned very quickly, at least in the eyes of others. No matter what the book was, as long as he read it once and explained it once, he could immediately remember it all. In a short period of 2 months, he had already learned all the books that the preparatory disciples needed to learn, such as reading, writing, medical practice, medicine identification, astronomy, and geography. While the other preparatory disciples who came with Yang Chen were still slowly learning how to read and write, Yang Chen was already standing at the entrance of the core training room of Yixiu Manor. There were always 2 outer sect disciples waiting here. Of course, they were only guarding some entry-level cultivation methods and nothing else. If one wanted to practice more advanced cultivation methods, he must become an official outer sect disciple before he could learn from the training disciples. I'm Yang Chen. Today, I came to the training room to find a suitable cultivation method to practice. Please make it convenient for me, senior brother. Yang Chen bowed to the outer sect disciple who guarded the training room. Yang Chen? I know you. You just entered Yixiu Manor for a few days, and you want to practice cultivation methods? Don't you think my Chunyang Palace is too simple? The disciple who guarded the training room had a good relationship with Sun Haijing. He had long known the news that Yang Chen beat Sun Haijing. Now, he naturally wanted to make things difficult for Yang Chen. Do you really think that you are already an outer sect disciple at the 3rd level of qi refining? Before Yang Chen could answer, in Yixiu Manor, there was suddenly a burst of qi of heaven and earth. It rushed up high and then quickly retracted. Then, a powerful divine sense swept over and left as soon as it touched him. Which martial uncle succeeded in foundation establishment? Seeing this situation, the disciple who guarded the door suddenly asked in surprise, but he didn't even want to pay attention to Yang Chen. Chapter 43. Yixiu Villa was the outermost door of Chunyang Palace, and it was also the place where all the preparatory disciples with spiritual roots began to lay the foundation. There was still a long distance from the Jiuyang Villa where the outer sect disciples lived. In the eyes of the outer sect disciples, it was simply impossible for someone to suddenly reach the Zhuji realm here. If someone really had such a cultivation, wouldn't he have been an outer sect disciple long ago? Although he was pleasantly surprised, the disciple guarding the door was somewhat uncertain. If he hadn't seen a certain senior fellow apprentice succeed in reaching the Zhuji realm, he really wouldn't be sure that someone had reached the Zhuji realm. In a flash, a figure appeared on the top of Xiao Villa. The figure seemed to have identified the direction and flew directly towards Yang Chen. Before the person arrived, his voice had already reached the ears of Yang Chen and the disciple guarding the door. Brother Yang, if it weren't for your guidance, I wouldn't have believed that I would have this day. Shanghai Feng felt Yang Chen's presence almost as soon as he came out of seclusion and hurriedly flew over. Having reached the Zhuji realm, this kind of flight was no longer a problem for him, and the first person he wanted to see after reaching the Zhuji realm was Yang Chen. Although he had only met Yang Chen twice, Shanghai Feng felt that he and Yang Chen were indescribably congenial. If at the beginning he still regretted that Yang Chen was secretly suppressed by Chu Heng, he no longer had that feeling now. Because he was already a Zhuji realm master and an inner sect disciple, he had the capital to fight against Chu Heng. If he wanted to help Yang Chen, it was just a matter of a word. In the end, what Chu Heng did was still not presentable. Seeing the appearance of Shanghai Feng, the disciple guarding the door opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Who would have thought that the person who had just reached the Zhuji realm was actually the director of Xiao Villa, Shanghai Feng, who everyone thought had no hope of reaching the Zhuji realm in his lifetime. Greetings, Martial Uncle Shangguan. After all, the gatekeeper disciple still called out the word Martial Uncle, but it didn't sound as willing as Yang Chen to call him. Shangguan Feng nodded faintly, then he no longer looked at the gatekeeper disciple and turned to ask Yang Chen, Brother Yang, what are you doing here? Brother Shangguan. Yang Chen did not call Shangguan Feng Martial Uncle according to seniority. Instead, he called him Big Brother because Shanghai Feng called him Little Brother. I came here to find a suitable cultivation technique to cultivate. Go in and choose. Shangguan Feng waved his hand and let them in without hesitation. He was the head steward of Yeshio Manor, and he hadn't stepped down yet, so he had the authority to begin with. Coupled with the fact that he had successfully built his foundation, his power had increased greatly. The disciples guarding the gate didn't even dare to show any signs of opposition, and they obediently made way for him. It's up to fate. I won't go in with you, lest I mislead you. Shangguan Feng reminded Yang Chen before he set off. Remember, you have a fire spiritual root, so choose a fire attribute cultivation technique. Thank you, Big Brother. Yang Chen thanked Shangguan Feng. Although Yang Chen didn't need guidance with his knowledge, Shangguan Feng's words were all golden words, not to mention the support and care in it. Yang Chen naturally knew what was good for him. Watching Yang Chen enter the training room, the gatekeeper disciple opened his mouth a few times, but he finally chose to shut up in front of Shangguan Feng. Anyway, Shangguan Feng had successfully built his foundation, and he would leave in a few days. When the new head steward arrived, Yang Chen still had no one to guide him. Cultivation was not something that a person could easily succeed by reading a few books and being guided by someone. Especially when entering the sect, the preparation disciple of Yeshio Manor needed at least 3 years, which had already explained everything. Although Chunyang Palace was a small sect, the yin and yang and 5 elements cultivation techniques were still complete. Because it was a cultivation technique prepared for the preparation disciples, all the cultivation techniques were copied in books, not jade slips. The preparation disciples had not cultivated their spiritual awareness, so even if there was a jade slip, they couldn't read it. The layout of the training room, Yang Chen still vaguely remembered it. When he came in and took a look, he immediately recovered his memory. Without saying anything, Yang Chen first went to the fire attribute cultivation technique area and chose a 4th fire attribute cultivation technique. Of course, this was just for show. With Yang Chen's familiarity with the fire attribute cultivation technique in his previous life, there was no need to specifically choose a fire attribute cultivation technique. Subsequently, Yang Chen almost turned to the earth attribute cultivation technique area without stopping. The training room was protected by a special array formation. The people outside did not know what cultivation technique the people inside had chosen. They did not even know what the people inside had done. This also provided convenience for Yang Chen's free movement. People who cultivated the Tao paid attention to fate. Whatever cultivation technique they liked or encountered, they would choose that cultivation technique. Especially the entry-level cultivation technique, under normal circumstances, There was rarely a situation where there was a strong desire. Even the younger generation cultivated from a young age by those big sects were the same. At most, after reaching the foundation stage, they would choose a better cultivation technique. This was also the reason why there was no supervision in the training room. Very easily, Yang Chen found the 6th earth attribute cultivation technique that he lacked among the 5 elements. Subsequently, Yang Chen turned to the metal attribute area and also found a metal attribute cultivation technique. These 2 cultivation techniques, Yang Chen did not take them out, but directly memorized them in the training room. With his current spiritual awareness and the experience of his previous life, he almost had a photographic memory. In a short moment, he had memorized the key points of these 2 cultivation techniques in his mind. In his previous life, except for the fire attribute cultivation technique, Yang Chen did not care much about the other cultivation techniques. The cultivation techniques that he had an impression of in his mind were only obtained later because of various reasons. When he explored them with his spiritual awareness, he had never used them. Naturally, in his previous life, he did not deliberately collect the full set of yin-yang 5 elements cultivation technique. He was not the head of a sect, so he did not have to worry about these things. Now, Yang Chen finally had all the entry-level cultivation techniques of the yin-yang 5 elements. The next thing was to cultivate all the 5 yin-yang 5 elements cultivation techniques. Like the 5 yang 5 elements cultivation techniques, the 5 yin-yang 5 elements cultivation techniques should be circulated at the same time, mutually reinforcing and restraining each other, reaching a perfect balance. Of course, this was not Yang Chen's ultimate goal. Yang Chen's current ultimate goal was to circulate the 10 yin-yang 5 elements cultivation techniques at the same time, and at the same time be able to mutually reinforce and restrain each other. Not only the 5 elements, but also the yin and yang must reach a perfect balance. For Yang Chen, perhaps until that time, he could be considered to have reached the first layer of the qi refining stage. But no matter what, now that he had obtained the cultivation techniques, he could openly start cultivating. This was already a big step towards becoming a disciple of his master. Perhaps, soon, Yang Chen could once again see his master's beautiful face, and once again become her disciple. Chapter 44. Everything that Yang Chen was doing right now was all for the sake of re-entering his master's tutelage. As for the enemies from his previous life, he didn't care about them for the time being. Even if he did, how could Yang Chen, a mere first-layer qi refining cultivator, single-handedly kill his way to Taishanmen and kill their disciple? If he wasn't an idiot, he absolutely wouldn't do such a brainless thing. Seeing that Yang Chen had brought out a fire attribute cultivation method, Shanghai Feng didn't say anything. It was only an introductory cultivation method and didn't have too many advantages and disadvantages. It was only for the sake of allowing disciples to sense qi and be able to circulate it through their body, sense the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and cultivate a certain amount of divine sense. The only difference was that the various large sects had different names. It didn't matter which one Yang Chen took, as long as it was a fire attribute cultivation method. While Yang Chen was choosing a cultivation method, Shanghai Feng stood at the entrance of the cultivation room like a guard, quietly waiting. He and Yang Chen didn't talk much, but the way they addressed each other as brother and little brother, in addition to Shanghai Feng's waiting attitude, already explained a lot. Even if the disciple guarding the door wanted to cause trouble, he couldn't do anything. He could only accompany Shanghai Feng and quietly wait for Yang Chen to come out. Come, let's go to Huge Xian. I'll give you a good explanation of this cultivation method. Shanghai Feng snatched the cultivation method from Yang Chen's hands and flipped through it a few times before understanding it. He spoke to Yang Chen without the slightest hesitation, then directly disappeared from the entrance of the cultivation room with Yang Chen. The disciple guarding the door didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly instructed another disciple and quickly ran to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa to report. With Shanghai Feng's support, it would be a joke for Chu Heng to seal Yang Chen. Younger brother Yang, you don't have a divine sense, so you can only listen to me for now. Shanghai Feng held the fire attribute cultivation method and began to read it word by word to Yang Chen. Then, he began to explain it word by word. Although Yang Chen was already familiar with this cultivation method and could recite it backwards, he had no choice but to pretend to be serious and obediently listen. Sheng Guanfeng was very generous. He was well aware of the way of cultivation. In addition to aptitude, the most important thing was each person's perception and state of mind, as well as acquired efforts. It was not easy to say that a person with a full value of spiritual root could easily cultivate to become a master. The understanding of various cultivation methods and the perception of various realms were different from person to person. Many people with spiritual roots were eliminated precisely because of this reason. The 3-year test for the preparatory disciples of the major sects was also based on this consideration. If one's perception was not enough, no matter how hard they worked, it would be in vain. Yang Chen understood the meaning of Shanghai Feng. In addition, he also needed such a reason to cover up his abnormal cultivation speed. Therefore, he followed Shanghai Feng very cooperatively and stayed in Huge Xian for several days. Next, Yang Chen began the so-called first-time cultivation when Shanghai Feng felt that he had enough understanding of the cultivation method. Of course, it was impossible for him to start cultivating when Shanghai Feng was outside. He just opened his eyes and stopped cultivating after the second layer of the 3 purities secret art. Almost no one could succeed in the first attempt, and Yang Chen was naturally no exception. When Yang Chen came out of the quiet room of Huge Xian, Shanghai Feng came forward with a look of expectation. He was even more anxious than his own cultivation and asked, "How was it?" "I vaguely felt a trace of qi." Yang Chen had the experience of cultivation, so he naturally knew how to say it to make Shanghai Feng happy and not confused at the same time. "Not bad, not bad. You can feel qi in your first practice. Even if you are talented, it is nothing more than this." Shanghai Feng was very pleased. "It seems that my efforts in the past few days have not been in vain." "Thank you, elder brother." After Yang Chen thanked him with a smile, he looked at Shanghai Feng and suddenly asked, "Elder brother, are you planning to leave Yeshio Villa?" "I have reached the foundation establishment stage. I have reported it a few days ago. The higher-ups have urged me several times to enter the inner mountain gate." Shanghai Feng did not hide it. He explained things to Yang Chen very clearly. "I deliberately delayed for a few days to give you guidance. You can now understand it on your own. It is time for me to leave." Yang Chen had already expected this situation. After Shanghai Feng successfully reached the foundation establishment stage, he would naturally become a disciple of the inner mountain gate, and Yeshio Villa would definitely be managed by someone else. Fortunately, what Shanghai Feng said before he left saved Yang Chen a lot of things. In the future, even if his cultivation was a little out of line, he could blame it on Shanghai Feng's guidance. "After I leave, you don't have to be afraid. Chu Heng is a disciple of the inner mountain gate, and so am I. Moreover, senior fellow apprentice Du also came to see you a few days ago. If Chu Heng makes things difficult for a preparatory disciple, I am afraid he will not be able to stay in Chunyang Palace. You can rest assured." Shanghai Feng told Yang Chen, "So, no matter who the newcomer is, I will arrange for him to take care of you. You can be like a few days ago, and no one can control you." "Congratulations, brother." "Thank you, brother." Shanghai Feng was very loyal, and Yang Chen would not be bad. Anyway, he knew that Shanghai Feng was a loyal person in his previous life. Since he was destined to become a disciple of the inner mountain gate in this life, he could have a deeper relationship with him in the future. Cultivation lasted for a long time, and the future was long. He was not in a hurry. Sheng Guanfeng said he would leave, without stopping for a moment. After a short rest, Yang Chen entered the quiet room again. He wanted to give people a sense of diligence. Without anyone to accompany him, Yang Chen finally let go of the restrictions and really began to cultivate. The first thing to bear the brunt was naturally the cultivation method of the 4th fire attribute. In his previous life, he was so familiar with this kind of cultivation method that he could not be more familiar with. Almost without any hindrance, he successfully practiced it. Inside his body, there was also the 4th fire attribute spiritual power. Next, one by one, he practiced the 5 elements of Yin cultivation methods. He did not come into contact with these in his previous life, But with the experience of the 5 elements of yang, each cultivation method only took a few days at most to reach perfection. Every time, Yang Chen only took a short rest and immediately returned to the quiet room to practice. Other than a few servants in huge xian, no one else could see him. This took more than half a month. However, this was not enough. Yang Chen did not need to show the realm of the first layer of qi training at this time. The time was still too fast. Yang Chen had already made a plan. After a period of time, he would first conquer the 5 elements of yin cultivation at the same time, then he would consider the situation of the 5 elements of yin and yang cultivation at the same time. When the 5 elements of yin and yang could be practiced at the same time and entered a stable state of balance, Yang Chen estimated that he could announce to the public that he had entered the first layer of qi training. This way, the time was estimated to be just right. It would not make people feel abrupt, and at the same time, it would not make people feel slow. Chapter 45. After making up his mind, just when Yang Chen was about to order Chenda to prepare food and rest, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. The senses of his soul that had been drifting outside discovered someone flying rapidly towards huge xian. Judging from their cultivation, they were at least at the 8th layer of qi practitioner. There was no doubt that this was the new caretaker of the manor since he was able to fly so openly through the manor and possess such a high level of cultivation. At this moment, he hurriedly flew here, apparently knowing the news that Yang Chen had come out of the quiet room. When cultivating in the quiet room, no one was allowed to disturb him unless it was something major. This was the rule. However, Yang Chen had not even seen the new caretaker since he had been appointed. Clearly, the new caretaker was infuriated, which was why he had rushed over to see Yang Chen. Perhaps he wanted to take him down a notch. Yang Chen's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly fished out a 1,000-year-old profound yang fruit from his merit ring and snapped it in half with a loud crack. He bit into the blood-red flesh and began chewing. At this moment, a figure had already appeared at the entrance, just in time to witness this. Wang Yuan was the new caretaker of the manor, as well as the caretaker candidate recommended by the senior uncles of the Bright Moon Hall who were responsible for passing on cultivation. The previous caretaker, Shanghai Feng, had reached foundation establishment and became an inner sect disciple, so he naturally became the caretaker of the manor. Naturally, the entire Xiu manor welcomed the new supervisor respectfully. Whether it was the preparatory disciples or the servants, they were all the same. Only a few people were exceptions. However, they all happened to be cultivating when the caretaker took over, so they could not be blamed for neglecting him. Of course, most of those people immediately went to greet the new Chief Steward Wang after they finished cultivating. Chief Steward Wang was very satisfied with their attitude. However, there was one person who did not appear at all. It was Yang Chen. Wang Yuan felt a headache when he thought of Yang Chen. The Bright Moon Hall's current cultivation disciple, Chu Heng, had specially instructed him to give Yang Chen a little something. In any case, he had to make sure that Yang Chen would not be able to successfully refine qi within 3 years and become a servant. However, the former director Shanghai Feng, who was also a foundation-building disciple, had especially exhorted him to take good care of Yang Chen during the handover and not to let Yang Chen suffer any grievances. Wang Yuan could feel how much Shanghai Feng took care of Yang Chen the moment he took office. Not only did Yang Chen live alone in the largest huge xian, but he also enjoyed the treatment of a 3rd-layer aura refining disciple. If this wasn't taking care of him, what was? But soon, Wang Yuan realized that it was Chu Heng who had given him the treatment of a 3rd-layer qi refining disciple. Wang Yuan quickly understood the cause and effect. It was nothing more than Yang Chen offending him and then deliberately retaliating, but he was afraid of being said to be small, so he would use such a trick. However, ever since he learned that Yang Chen had been guided by Shanghai Feng for many days and had used a test to ruin Chu Heng's plans, Wang Yuan knew that Chu Heng's obstructions no longer existed in front of Yang Chen. If Yang Chen was not an idiot, becoming an outer sect disciple was already a done deal. However, his attitude towards Yang Chen depended on Yang Chen's attitude towards Wang Yuan. If Yang Chen was tactful, then everyone would be happy. However, if Yang Chen was arrogant, then Wang Yuan could not be blamed for using a little trick. Even if Yang Chen had 10,000 gene of divine strength, it would not be a problem for an expert at the 8th layer of Qi refining to deal with a 1st layer Qi refining preparatory disciple. When he received the news that Yang Chen had come out, Wang Yuan rushed over. However, as soon as he entered the door, he saw a scene that almost made him collapse. Yang Chen was actually holding a fruit that looked very much like a mysterious yang fruit. He broke it open and put the flesh into his mouth, eating it until juice dripped down. Wang Yuan did not even need to get close to feel the powerful spiritual power contained in the peel that Yang Chen had thrown away. This is... Wang Yuan practically shot forward and grabbed the peel that Yang Chen had thrown away. With his eyesight, he immediately determined that this was definitely a mysterious yang fruit. Moreover, it was a mysterious yang fruit that was no less than 1,000 years old. 1,000-year-old mysterious yang fruit. Unexpectedly, Yang Chen had not handled it at all, but had just broken it open and thrown it into his mouth. At this moment, Wang Yuan's heart felt even more painful than being cut into pieces. What kind of prodigal son would think of eating a mysterious yang fruit raw? Moreover, he even wanted to peel off the skin? This 1,000-year-old mysterious yang fruit, if refined into a foundation establishment pill, could simply let a person directly reach the foundation establishment stage. There would no longer be any possible or impossible problems. Holding the 2 halves of the thick mysterious yang fruit, looking at the juice still dripping from it, Wang Yuan wished that he could kick Yang Chen, this prodigal son, out of the sect and make him scram as far away as possible. Resisting the pain in his heart, Wang Yuan took the 2 pieces of peel and angrily asked Yang Chen, "Do you know what this is?" "I don't know, but it's very delicious," Yang Chen disapprovingly replied. After he finished speaking, he stuck out his tongue and licked his lips, as if he was still savoring the sweet taste of the mysterious yang fruit. "You don't know?" Wang Yuan almost roared out, "Don't tell me you haven't learned how to identify medicinal ingredients?" "I've never learned and no one taught me." Yang Chen looked at Wang Yuan innocently as he slowly said in a tone that could make people burn with anger, "Even if I asked someone else, they wouldn't tell me. But right who are you?" Only then did Wang Yuan remember why he had come. At the same time, he also heard Yang Chen's words. He suddenly felt extremely dissatisfied with Chu Heng, who had secretly set Yang Chen up. If he hadn't asked Yang Chen to learn how to identify medicinal ingredients, would Yang Chen have been able to destroy such a high-quality medicinal ingredient? If this foundation establishment pill had been given to him, he would have definitely become an inner sect disciple. "I'm Wang Yuan, the new manager of the Yeshio Manor." Wang Yuan finally suppressed his anger and revealed his identity. Of course, even if he didn't say it, Yang Chen knew that Wang Yuan had become an inner sect disciple later on. It could be said that there was someone like him in the Bright Moon Hall. "So it's the new manager. My apologies for not recognizing you." Yang Chen hurriedly cupped his hands and apologized. "Someone, serve tea." When Chinda brought the tea in, Yang Chen directly said to Chinda, "Chinda, take the peel away. Don't let Manager Wang see it as a joke." Looking at Wang Yuan almost with a reluctant expression, he put the 2 pieces of profound yang fruit skin in his hands on the plate held by Chinda. Yang Chen smiled and said, "I picked up a few fruits on the way to the apprenticeship. There is nothing special about them, they are delicious. If Steward Wang wants to have a taste, I'll pick a few more for Steward Wang when I have the qualifications to go out." Wang Yuan's eyes widened when he heard this. There's actually a 1,000-year mysterious yang fruit. Chapter 46. Listening to Yang Chen's tone. Not only did he have more than 1,000-year mysterious yang fruit, Yang Chen had eaten more than one. At this moment, Wang Yuan finally understood why Yang Chen could rely on brute force to defeat a 3rd-layer Qi practitioner disciple. 1,000-year mysterious yang fruit, and only eating the flesh, who knew what kind of miraculous medicinal effects it would have? Although Shenda was only a servant, he had learned the basics in a systematic way. At first, when he heard Yang Chen's instructions, he thought it was just some ordinary fruit peel, but when he saw Wang Yuan's reluctant gaze, he began to pay attention. Looking at the 2 pieces of fruit peel, his mind quickly flashed through one by one. and after a moment he was finally able to determine what it was. Although he did not dare to be completely sure, Wang Yuan's expression had already turned the little bit of doubt he had into a certainty. Compared to Wang Yuan, Shen Da's performance was even more unbearable. After confirming that the peel was indeed the mysterious yang fruit, and it was the skin of a very old mysterious yang fruit, Shen Da's entire body became sluggish. Holding the tray, he just stood there in a daze, his eyes fixed on the two pieces of fruit peel, no longer able to move an inch. The skin of an old mysterious yang fruit had at least 30% of its medicinal power inside. Even if it was not enough to refine a foundation-building pill, the remaining medicinal power was enough to refine a few extremely effective qi-nourishing pills. With these qi-nourishing pills, he might be able to break through the bottleneck of the third-layer qi practitioner and enter the fourth-layer qi practitioner realm. This thing, was it going to be his? Listening to Yang Chen's words, it was clearly so. However, Shen Da still did not dare to believe it. His mind was buzzing until he heard what Yang Chen said. 1,000-year mysterious yang fruit. There was more. Shen Da was shocked to the point where he stood. Wang Yuan was also shocked to the point where he did not know what to say. As for the original intention of rushing here, he had long thrown it beyond the 9 heavens. What arrogant and unruly attitude! What taking care of senior brother Chu's face! How could it compare to a real 1,000-year profound yang fruit? Even though Wang Yuan was already at the 8th layer of qi refining, he couldn't help but breathe heavily at this moment. After taking a few deep breaths, he forced himself to calm down. He looked up at Yang Chen and asked, "Is this true?" His face was filled with surprise and joy, but also a bit of disbelief. "It's just a fruit. It's not a big deal." Yang Chen found it funny, but he continued to say generously, "If Steward Wang needs it, I will still say the same thing. When I have the qualifications to travel, I dare not promise you anything else, but I will definitely bring one back for Steward Wang." After saying that, as if afraid that Wang Yuan wouldn't believe him, he stretched out his hand and swore, "I swear on my inner demon. You don't have to doubt me anymore, right?" Wang Yuan no longer had any doubts when he heard Yang Chen swear on his heart demon. For cultivators, the most taboo was to say something that didn't match one's heart, especially this kind of great vow of inner demons. Once it was made, if one traveled, the only result would be the birth of inner demons, and they would never be able to advance in this life. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't dare to casually swear on their heart demon. For Yang Chen, a profound yang fruit was really nothing. If this Wang Yuan could take care of him like Shangguan Feng and let Yang Chen live comfortably during his time at Yixio Manor, Yang Chen wouldn't mind giving him one. It might be precious outside, but for Yang Chen, who had tens of thousands of profound yang fruit, it might just be a delicious fruit. Could Junior Brother Yang, if you have any requests in the future at Yixio Manor, don't hesitate to look for me. Wang Yuan directly patted his chest and promised, "As long as it's not too excessive, I won't refuse." "Then, can Steward Wang tell me what this fruit is?" Yang Chen smiled and asked somewhat slyly. If Yang Chen hadn't sworn on his heart demon, Wang Yuan might have thought of ways to hide the secret of the profound yang fruit. But now, he didn't even care that there was a servant beside him, Shen Da, and directly explained, "This is a 1,000-year-old profound yang fruit, the main ingredient for refining the foundation establishment pill. With this 1,000-year-old profound yang fruit, I am confident that I can reach the foundation establishment stage within 10 years. When that time comes, I will have to thank Junior Brother Yang for your generosity." Well said, well said. As Yang Chen listened, he already knew in his heart that if nothing unexpected happened and Wang Yuan presided over Yixio Manor, his days would no longer be disturbed. Moreover, with the excuse of Shangguan Feng and Wang Yuan, no one would suspect him even if he cultivated a little faster. Not everyone had the opportunity to eat the 1,000-year-old profound yang fruit like it was a fruit. Wang Yuan quickly took his leave, but before he left, he still gave Yang Chen some pointers. He came in a hurry, and finally left with a happy face. Yang Chen only used a profound yang fruit, and achieved his goal without bloodshed. His display of strength had instantly turned into a joyous party. Chu Heng's arrangements were already meaningless, at least in Yixio Manor. The housekeeper had completely sided with Yang Chen, but the others did not dare to be rude to Yang Chen because of Chu Heng's own instructions. In Yixiu manner, Yang Chen was simply below one person and above tens of thousands of people, and he could do whatever he wanted. However, Yang Chen did not waste too much time on these boring things. The sooner he reached the foundation establishment stage, the sooner Yang Chen could become a disciple of his master, and the sooner he could arrange many things. Why would he have any time to waste? Shen Da's luck was deep to the extreme. He had obtained 2/2 of the profound yang fruit skin from Yang Chen, and it just so happened that among the servants, one of them knew some basic alchemy techniques, and could refine more than a dozen low-level qi-nourishing pills. Even if they could not monopolize it, 1 or 2 per person was also a great thing. At least they had seen the hope of reaching the 4th layer of refining. Knowing where these benefits came from, and also knowing Wang Yuan's attitude towards Yang Chen, Shen Da and the other servants served Yang Chen with more dedication, which made Yang Chen very satisfied. After dealing with the new housekeeper Wang Yuan, Yang Chen once again fell into the state of crazy cultivation. Practicing the yin-yang 5 elements, with the experience and foundation of the yang 5 elements, only took a month. However, the yin-yang 5 elements secret art was always open, and even with Yang Chen's powerful spiritual sense, it was only after 3 months that he was lucky enough to succeed once. If there was a first time, there would be a second time. Yang Chen also knew the principle of more haste, less speed. Every day, he was just looking for experience, looking for methods. Finally, the number of times the yin-yang 5 elements secret art was more and more, the time was getting longer and longer, and the cultivation method was getting more and more stable. Finally, 1.5 years after Yang Chen stepped into the Yixiu manor, the yin-yang 5 elements secret art was finally completed. Yang Chen could finally put on a dignified appearance of qi refining and became an official outer sect disciple of Chunyang Palace. Chapter 47. When Yang Chen came out of the quiet room completely, counting the days, he had spent 1 year and 4 months in the quiet room alone. For such a long time, Yang Chen had been practicing in the quiet room. When he came out, at most, he would take a short break and eat something, and then immediately return to the quiet room to practice. However, the cultivation of the yin-yang 5 elements secret art was unexpectedly difficult for Yang Chen. In such a long time, the practice of the yin-yang 5 elements secret art took only 1.5 months. The rest of the time was all in harmonizing the yin-yang 5 elements secret art. From the beginning to the end, even if Yang Chen cultivated the 3 purities secret art's powerful spiritual awareness control, it took such a long time to succeed. Compared to Yang Chen's expectations, at least the difficulty of the beginning was several times higher. Fortunately, everything was difficult at the beginning, the most basic cultivation method had been mastered, and the future cultivation road was smooth. Yin-yang 5 elements secret art. Before he had fully refined the yin-yang 5 elements secret art to reach the great yin-yang 5 elements secret art, Yang Chen used the yin-yang 5 elements secret art to call his own cultivation method. No matter what each of the 10 cultivation methods he practiced was called, for Yang Chen, it was just called the first wood, second wood, third fire, fourth fire, fifth earth, sixth earth, seventh metal, ninth water and 10th water, these 10 kinds of spiritual power. Of course, what Yang Chen showed to the outside was the 4th fire cultivation method, because this was the cultivation method he got from the training room of the Yixiu Villa in Chunyang Palace. During these days, Wang Yuan, the chief steward of the Yixiu Villa, took good care of Yang Chen. Not only was the monthly portion issued on time and in full, but there were always a few days a month in Yang Chen's huge pavilion for a few days. Every time it was Chief Steward Wang's turn, it was also the time when he gave Yang Chen pointers on cultivation methods and various basic knowledge. The high treatment could make people envious. When Yang Chen came out, Wang Yuan had been waiting in the huge pavilion. Half a month ago, Yang Chen said that he was going to retreat, and he already had the confidence. Wang Yuan seemed to believe this and had been waiting here today. When he saw Yang Chen, his eyes lit up, he looked up and down, and then he congratulated him loudly. When he saw Yang Chen today, Wang Yuan was keenly aware of the difference. Yang Chen had an unusually obvious fire attribute spiritual power. It was clearly a sign that he had succeeded in refining qi. In the past, Yang Chen used the reverse 5 elements cultivation method to compress his spiritual power. Today, he finally no longer concealed it. After entering the Yixio manor, he had to start from the beginning. Moreover, Chu Heng made a few small stumbling blocks for him. Yang Chen was still able to reach the standard of the first level of qi refining in a short period of a year and a half. No one dared to say that his understanding was insufficient. None of the preparatory disciples who had entered the Yixio manor at the same time as him had succeeded in refining their qi. This had already highlighted Yang Chen's excellence. Although Yang Chen's basic knowledge seemed to be lacking in others' eyes, no one could stop Yang Chen from joining the ranks of the outer disciples of Chunyang Palace. Not even the technique imparting disciple, Chu Heng. Yang Chen was well aware of what Wang Yuan wanted. In any case, he had already sworn the Great Heart Demon Oath, so Wang Yuan was not afraid that Yang Chen would go back on his word. Instead, he withstood Chu Heng's pressure and protected Yang Chen in every way possible. It was the same now. Wang Yuan was even prepared for this. Seeing that Yang Chen had indeed stepped into the first layer of qi refining, he congratulated him and clapped his hands twice. Immediately, 2 servants walked in from outside the door, each carrying a tray. There were even 2 servants, a man and a woman. The man was Shen De, and the woman was the maid who controlled the illusion talisman. Among the trays in their hands, one had an embroidered cloth bag, and the other had a tray full of spirit stones. This is the Qiankuan bag given by my master after becoming an outer disciple. Wang Yuan grabbed the embroidered cloth bag and stuffed it into Yang Chen's hands. He enthusiastically introduced it. As long as you add your divine sense mark to it, you can use it as you please. Yang Chen's heart was calm, but his face was pleasantly surprised as he took the Qiankuan bag. Following Wang Yuan's instructions, he imprinted his divine sense mark on it. Then, pretending to be new, he began to look inside and outside. Wang Yuan did not disturb Yang Chen's actions. When he first received the Qiankuan bag, he was also overjoyed. So, he understood Yang Chen's current mood very well. After waiting for Yang Chen to finish playing with the Qiankuan bag, Wang Yuan brought over the second tray of spirit stones. Since Martial Uncle Chu said that your treatment is similar to that of a third-layer qi refining disciple, then every month you will get 1 gene of low-grade spirit stones. You didn't need them before, but now, I'll compensate you for what you've received since you entered the sect. Yang Chen did not stand on ceremony. He accepted it all and put it into the brand new Qiankuan bag. Once Yang Chen finished doing all this and dismissed the servants, Wang Yuan asked, "Junior Martial Brother Yang, do you plan to go to 9 Earth Mountain Villa now or stay at Yixio Mountain Villa for a while? In my opinion, it's better for us cultivators to be upright and peaceful." Now that Yang Chen was an official outer sect disciple, according to common sense, he should naturally go to 9 Earth Mountain Villa where outer sect disciples learned and cultivated. But now that Chu Heng was the strength-imparting disciple, he probably wouldn't treat Yang Chen very well. If he stayed at Yixio Mountain Villa, he could enjoy special treatment. But there were pros and cons to everything. If he stayed at Yixio Mountain Villa and waited until the 3 years were up, Chu Heng would most likely step down as the strength-imparting disciple and be replaced by someone else. At most, he would waste a year and a half of Yang Chen's time, but he wouldn't have to directly face the conflict with Chu Heng. Peace and quiet didn't seem to be a bad thing. Although 9 Earth Mountain Villa had Chu Heng overseeing it, everyone there was an outer sect disciple. Whether it was technique guidance, distribution of spirit stones and resources, or even interaction between fellow disciples, it was much better than Yixio Mountain Villa. After all, Yixio Mountain Villa was only a place for preparatory disciples to learn. Even with Wang Yuan's care and guidance, it was still not as thorough as the guidance of Foundation Establishment inner sect disciples. Moreover, 9 Earth Mountain Villa's location was richer than Yixio Mountain Villa, and it had many benefits for cultivation. If there was no Chu Heng, going to 9 Earth Mountain Villa would be the best choice. But it was precisely because of Chu Heng that Wang Yuan asked Yang Chen for his opinion. We cultivators face difficulties head-on. If I stop because of one martial Uncle Chu, then no matter how amazing I am, I'm just a mediocre person. Yang Chen knew Wang Yuan's meaning, but he didn't accept Wang Yuan's good intentions to keep the peace. He pondered for a moment, then said, "If I shrink back today, I will shrink back in the future. I don't think I'm worthy of Senior Brother Wang's attention. Senior Brother Wang, please make arrangements. I will go to 9 Earth Mountain Villa in the next few days." In his previous life, Yang Chen had fallen to such a state because of this kind of personality. He wouldn't repeat the same mistake in this life. These few short sentences gave Wang Yuan an indescribable feeling. He didn't know where he suddenly felt a sense of pride. "Well said. Junior Brother Yang, I suddenly had some enlightenment. I will go into seclusion for 10 days. After 10 days, I will send someone to send you to 9 Earth Mountain Villa." Chapter 48. Wang Yuan was originally a peaceful person. This was very similar to Yang Chen's previous life. He did not have much of a competitive heart, otherwise he would not have had the chance to manage the Yeshio manor. However, Yang Chen's words had given him a flash of inspiration. He had vaguely grasped the essence of what he always felt was missing. Now, Wang Yuan already felt that all the power in his body was faintly vibrating, as if he was about to break through. This feeling made him look forward to it and excited. This flash of inspiration was really rare. Perhaps the matter of Yang Chen could only be delayed for a few days. Moreover, even if it was immediately arranged, it was impossible for Yang Chen to become an outer sect disciple immediately. Every sect had their own rules, and Yang Chen was extremely clear about the rules of Chunyang Palace. If a preparatory disciple wanted to become an official outer sect disciple, there was still a necessary ceremony. Only then would he be considered to have truly entered the sect. All the outer sect disciples had a nominal master-disciple relationship with the teaching disciples. This was the relationship between Sun Haijing and Chu Heng. However, from the attribute of Sun Haijing's spirit root, he would also join the Bright Moon Hall in the future, so he would naturally curry favor with Chu Heng. Chu Heng would also deliberately take care of him, so the relationship between the two was even closer than the others. Even if Wang Yuan sent a message through a communication method, it would take a few days before Yang Chen could move. Yang Chen was not in a hurry. He could use the time he had to wait to make some talisman papers. After sending Wang Yuan off, Shenda arrived before Yang Chen respectfully. Ever since he had beaten them into submission, Shenda's attitude towards Yang Chen had always been like this. After waiting for Yang Chen to sit down, Shenda respectfully took out a small jade bottle from his universe pouch and presented it to Yang Chen. "What is this?" Yang Chen did not extend his hand to receive it. Instead, he looked at the jade bottle and asked in surprise, "Young Master Yang, this is the energy recovery pill refined from the skin of the profound Yang fruit." Shenda quickly explained, "This originally belonged to young Master Yang, so it's best to return it to him." With that, he placed the jade bottle on the table in front of Yang Chen. Yang Chen stared at Shenda and looked at it for a long time. Then he shook his head and said, "You take it and use it. It's not of much use to me." Shenda panicked. If Yang Chen did not want it, then wouldn't he have wasted all his efforts? Shenda was convinced that he had been defeated by Yang Chen empty-handed. However, he was a smart person. After the battle, he discovered that Shanghai Feng had gone into seclusion and succeeded in 2 months, becoming an inner sect disciple. Today, he saw with his own eyes that after Wang Yuan and Yang Chen talked, they were in a hurry to retreat. It would be strange if there was nothing strange about it. Thinking of the attitude of the previous 2 general managers towards Yang Chen, it was not difficult for Shenda to understand that they must have gotten some great benefits from Yang Chen. Otherwise, why would they take the risk of offending the inner sect's martial Uncle Chu to help Yang Chen? Moreover, Shenda also recognized from the skin afterwards that it was the skin of the profound Yang fruit the year before last. Yang Chen still had it, which meant that it was self-evident. If he did not hold on to Yang Chen's thick thighs, he would not have any chance when Yang Chen left Yishio Manor. Shenda had a quick discussion with the servants who had helped him last time. At that time, he had asked He Lian to refine the qi-nourishing pill, but none of them had taken it. That was why they had offered the medicine today. Seeing that Yang Chen didn't accept it, Chinda didn't even think about it. He directly knelt on the ground and said respectfully, "Young Master Yang, I know that young master has a promising future. I have offended you in the past, please forgive me. I've long forgotten about those things." Yang Chen smiled. He did not have enough time to cultivate. How could he make life difficult for a few slaves from Yixiu Manor? He was not a narrow-minded person like Chu Heng. "Young master, the four of us hope to be able to serve young master all the time." Shinda did not hide it. Facing Yang Chen, he directly stated his request. As he spoke, 3 people came in from outside. They came to Yang Chen and knelt in a row with Shinda. They were He Lian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun. They were the 3 slaves who had been beaten by Yang Chen. Yang Chen did not expect such a scene. However, he did not have any ill feelings towards the 4 of them. Although at the beginning, the 4 of them were against him under the arrangement of Chu Heng, after being taught a lesson by him, they served him honestly and never made any mistakes. Speaking of which, Yang Chen was also quite satisfied. The 4 of them wanted to follow Yang Chen. They saw Yang Chen's future development and wanted to take the opportunity to go further. Everyone had the desire to improve, and Yang Chen would not strike them down. In any case, the 4 of them were easy to use. Moreover, they were considered to have high cultivation among the slaves. Yang Chen did not mind them following him. In any case, there would be slaves to serve him when he arrived at 9 Earth Manor. The 4 of them saw that Yang Chen was still muttering to himself. They looked at each other and then knelt on the ground in unison. "Please allow it, young master." After a while, the 4 people who were kneeling on the ground heard Yang Chen's promised voice. "Okay, get up." The 4 of them were overjoyed. When they straightened their backs, they discovered that the jade bottle containing the qi-nourishing pills had been delivered to them by Yang Chen. "Young master, this was originally yours. We only refined it a little." Shinda naturally did not dare to take these things. They only hoped that Yang Chen would give them some pointers when the opportunity arose. That was enough. "You refined it? He Lian?" Yang Chen looked at He Lian and asked. He Lian hurriedly nodded. Yang Chen smiled and reached out to open the jade bottle. He took out a pill and looked at it carefully. A small flame suddenly rose from his finger and wrapped around the pill in his hand. It was just a qi-nourishing pill. Yang Chen did not need to use the techniques of the Elder Lord Pill Art and the Pill Accumulation Scripture. Although Yang Chen's flame was small, it had already burned the qi-nourishing pill to a smaller size after a moment. Subsequently, Yang Chen did the same for the dozen or so pills in the bottle. After they were all completed, he put them into the jade bottle and sent it to the 4 of them. The qi-nourishing pill was refined a little to remove some impurities. Seeing that the 4 of them were still hesitant to take it, Yang Chen smiled. "This thing is useless to me. Take it." The 4 of them exchanged glances again. Shenda reached out and took the jade bottle. He put it away like he had received a treasure. As for He Lian, her eyes were filled with admiration when she saw the scene just now. A person who could refine pills with his bare hands at the first level of qi training stage, even if it was a qi-nourishing pill, his future would definitely be limitless. "All right, Shinda, your foundation is not bad. Take 2 qi-nourishing pills tonight. Keep one in your mouth. You might be able to break through to the 3rd level of qi training stage in one go." Yang Chen suddenly turned to Shinda and pointed out, "When you feel that you still have half of your mana left, take the pill in your mouth. There's at least a 70% chance." Chapter 49. When Shinda heard this, his face was filled with ecstasy. His guess was finally confirmed. Although Yang Chen was only at the first layer of qi refinement, he had a pair of discerning eyes. He could easily see the bottlenecks in everyone's cultivation and give them pointers. Shengguan Feng was like this, Wang Yuan was like this, and now it was finally his turn. This was something that Shinda had suspected when he discovered that Yang Chen had a photographic memory, but he had never mentioned it to the others. Now that they heard Yang Chen say it so straightforwardly, no matter how stupid the others were, they had been serving by Yang Chen's side for a long time, so they knew what had happened. For a moment, the other 3 looked at Shinda with an envious gaze. Shenda easily obtained Yang Chen's pointers, but he didn't know when they would have such an opportunity. Shenda has accumulated enough, he just doesn't know the method to break through. Yang Chen saw through He Lian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun's thoughts at a glance and said, "It's not time for you guys yet, work hard." "Yes, young master." The three immediately came to their senses and bowed to Yang Chen. After Yang Chen finished speaking, he didn't let them leave. Instead, he raised his hand and a ball of flame appeared again. The delicate flame in Yang Chen's hand began to change into various shapes. One moment it became a flame thread, the next moment it became a ball of fire, and the next moment it became a lifelike animal made of flames. In Yang Chen's hand, the flames seemed to come to life. Shenda, He Lian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun were dumbfounded when they saw Yang Chen control the flame as he pleased. Flames could be used like this? Especially Gu Kun, who cultivated the flaming palm and obviously had the same fire spirit root as Yang Chen, her eyes almost popped out of her head. No wonder Yang Chen could easily refine the impurities in the qi nourishing pill. This extraordinary technique of controlling fire was outstanding even among the inner sect disciples in the foundation establishment stage. The four servants all thought this way, and their admiration for Yang Chen grew even stronger. Sometimes, cultivation doesn't have to be all about fighting. Yang Chen's words rang in the four's ears at the right time. Consider some other directions and it can broaden your horizons. In the future, when you cultivate, don't be restricted by the power of your Fa Li. Control is also very important. This was what Yang Chen had after he entered the golden core stage in his previous life. Of course, he wouldn't make the same mistakes in this life. However, in the ears of the four people, these words were like the morning bell and evening drum, opening up a whole new world in front of everyone's eyes. Originally, they had been cultivating with all their might just for the sake of breaking through to the next realm and having powerful combat strength. Only now did they realize that they had already strayed from the right path. "Thank you, young master, for your guidance." The four people sincerely thanked Yang Chen. This time, Yang Chen did not keep them and waved them out. He slowly tasted the spiritual power in his body and began to ponder what kind of talisman he should make before going to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. This time, Yang Chen didn't keep them and waved his hand for them to leave. He slowly tasted the surging Fa Li in his body and began to ponder what kind of talismans he should make before going to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Talismans were made with higher level materials and stronger Fa Li. The principle was the same as talisman paper, but its power was many times greater. Just as Yang Chen was pondering, in the 9 Earth Villa of the Meiqing Mountain in the Pure Yang Palace, the disciple on duty, Chu Heng, looked at the message from Wang Yuan, the general manager of the Yixiu Villa. Just as Yang Chen was pondering, in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa of Meiqing Mountain in Chunyang Palace, the disciple on duty, Chu Heng, was looking at the message from Wang Yuan, the manager of Yixiu Mountain Villa. Chu Heng was a prideful person. With his status as a foundation establishment disciple, if he were to personally deal with a mortal, he would not be able to put down his pride. However, for the sake of Taishanmen Li Qingxin's request, he had asked Sun Haijing to deliberately make things difficult for Yang Chen during the disciple recruitment, just so that Yang Chen would not have any chance. However, he did not expect that after Du Qian appeared, Yang Chen would seize the opportunity to defeat Sun Haijing, ruthlessly humiliating him. After that, Chu Heng ordered the previous 2 supervisors of Yixiu Manor to make things difficult for Yang Chen. He heard that the rules that Yang Chen had set were well implemented in Yixiu Manor. However, under these circumstances, Yang Chen was still able to cultivate to the first layer of qi refining. Furthermore, he was the first among the 20 or so disciples that year. It was truly infuriating. He had thought that with the head steward of Yixiu Manor handling this matter and the rules he had announced, no one would dare to break it. Now, it seemed that it was completely ineffective. He didn't know who had broken the rules. If he found out who it was, he would definitely teach that guy a lesson. However, right now, he had no choice but to seriously consider how to deal with Yang Chen. If he allowed Yang Chen to become an outer sect disciple, he would be going back on his word. Chu Heng definitely could not let this happen. However, Yang Chen had already reached the first layer of qi refining, so he had no way of stopping it. After thinking it over, Chu Heng could only call Sun Haijing over and tell him the news. Go and think of a way to prevent that Yang Chen from reaching 9 Earth Manor. Chu Heng said coldly, turned around, and was about to leave. I don't care what you do, but you can't let anyone discover that you've broken the sect rules. Otherwise, even I won't be able to save you. Of course, I don't know anything about what you've done, understand? Sun Haijing hurriedly nodded and replied respectfully, Yes, master. A ray of light shot out from Chu Heng's hand and directly flew in front of Sun Haijing. This is a magic tool that I've refined for you. Refine it as soon as possible, it will help your strength. There's also a batch of spirit stones, use them as you see fit. Many thanks, master. Sun Haijing was overjoyed, and once again loudly thanked Sun Haijing. He was extremely respectful, completely the attitude of a disciple towards his master. Only when Chu Heng had disappeared without a trace did Sun Haijing raise his head, and a trace of a sinister smile appeared on his face. His eyes also shone with a hint of spirit. Yang Chen would only reach 9 Earth Manor from Yixiu Manor in 10 days. Meiqing Mountain was very large, and the distance between 9 Earth Manor and Yixiu Manor would take a full 5 days for an ordinary person to travel on foot. Even an outer sect disciple of the first layer of qi refining would need around 3 days before learning the flying technique. This period of time was enough for Sun Haijing to arrange a few accidents. When he thought of how he had been beaten unconscious by Yang Chen in front of his fellow disciples a year and a half ago, Sun Haijing couldn't help but feel a wave of anger rise within him. If it weren't for the fact that outer sect disciples wouldn't come to Yixiu Manor for no reason, Sun Haijing would have long thought of a way to end Yang Chen's life. Now that he had Chu Heng's support, Sun Haijing definitely wouldn't let Yang Chen take a step into 9 Earth Manor alive. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.